Hello, everybody. Welcome to Parshas Vayechi. We made it. I made it. I'm very proud. I'm very excited. An entire sefer of the Torah. This is the last parsha of Sefer Bereshis, and we end it with Chazak, Chazak, V'nis Chazek, and next week, onto Shemos. So here we are. We made it, and thank you for joining me. Giving me this opportunity to teach, and hopefully you're gaining along the way as well. So Parshas Vayechi, Yaakov Avinu is on his deathbed, and he's giving brachos to all the Shvatim, and Yosef brings his sons. It's a very famous scene. All the kindergarten children do a project on it where he brings Menashe and Efraim, and he puts Menashe by Yaakov Avinu's right hand because he's the oldest. And as we know, the right hand takes precedence. We use the right for Shema. We do everything on the right first, unless you're a lefty, in which some things your left will go first because in that case, your left hand is prominent. But for the majority, Torah looks at the right hand as the stronger hand, the dominant hand, the hand of chesed. Even if you are a lefty, right symbolizes chesed. And so he puts Menashe to the right hand and Ephraim to Yaakov Avinu's left hand. And because that's where they naturally would go according to their birth order. Menashe is the Bechar, Ephraim is the younger one, and all seems good except for the fact that Yaakov Avinu goes like that. He crosses over his hands. And when he does, we hear this little dialogue, a very interesting dialogue in which I'm going to actually show it to you. I've prepared the psukim on a slide. Go me. And let me share my screen. Where is it? How come I don't see it? Here it is. Okay, so we have, here we go. So Vayomer Yosef El Aviv. I could make it a little bigger by pressing slideshow. Here we go. Vayomer Yosef El Aviv. Lochein, this is not so. This isn't right. Avi, he's talking to his father, right? So my father, Lochein, this is not so. Hizeh habachar, because this is the bachar, meaning Menashe. Sim yemincha al rosho. Put your right hand, yamin, on his head. You should put your right hand on Menashe's head because he is the older one. And how in the next pasuk, Yaakov Avinu responds, "Vayima'in aviv," and he refused. He rejected Yosef's suggestion. Vayomer, and he said, "Yadati vini, yadati. I know my son. I know that he's the older one. Don't think this is out of forgetfulness or I messed up in some way. This is purposeful. Gam hu yihiyeh le'am." He also will become a nation, a people. V'gam hu yigdal, and he will also be great, meaning Menashe. Ve'ulam, but achiv hakaton, his younger brother, meaning Ephraim, yigdal mimenu, will become even greater than him. V'zar'o yiyeh melo hagayim, and his children's fame will fill the nations. I brought for you also the Rashi here. The Rashis here are interesting. So Yadati v'ni Yadati, as we said, I know he's the firstborn. I understand Menashe is the firstborn. And Gam hu yihiyeh la'am v'gam hu yigdal is referring to Menashe, that Menashe she'asid Gidon, let's say Smimenu. So in the future, Gidon will descend from him. Sha'kadosh Baruch Hu osa nes al yado. So Rashi is saying that this is a reference to Gidon, in which Hashem will make a nes for him. So yes, he will turn into a nation, and he'll also be great. There will be greatness stemming from Menashe. But his younger brother will become even greater than him. So Rashi explains that as Sha'asid Yehoshua, let's say Smimenu, right? So who's more famous, Gidon or Yehoshua, right? Yehoshua, we all know Yehoshua was Moshe Rabbeinu's successor, who actually led the Jewish people into Eretz Yisrael. And what does it say in Rashi? Sheyanchil es haaretz, that he will distribute the land. He will settle the land, right? He will settle Bnei Yisrael into the land. Vilamein Torah li Yisrael, and he will teach Torah to Yisrael. So therefore, because Yehoshua, on a very simple level, because Yehoshua will come out of Ephraim, and he will be greater than who will come out of Menashe. So therefore, Yaakov decides to switch the hands and put his right hand on Ephraim. And then there's another Rashi, Vizario Yihiyeh Milo Hagayim, and it's referring to the whole world will become filled with his fame, and his name will be spread, because Yehoshua will stop the sun in its tracks. And so the whole world will know, meaning the whole world was affected by that. Like, wait, what happened? It was supposed to be sunset, and then it just didn't. It didn't happen. It stopped. So the whole world knew about Yehoshua and his greatness, as opposed to Menashe's descendants. So Rashi is giving us this explanation. However, we're going to go a little deeper. Let me stop sharing for now. We're going to go a little deeper. So we have to recognize that everything in the Torah is exact, and particularly with our tzaddikim, Yaakov Avinu, one of the Avos, and the Shvatim, they don't make mistakes. Nothing is a mistake. So therefore, there is what Yosef did in putting Menashe first was not a mistake. And what Yaakov did in switching the hands was not a mistake. The dialogue is interesting, but the dialogue points out to us that and highlights that there's something deeper going on here. And it gives this opportunity to dig deep and learn a lesson. So how is it that Yosef felt one way, that the right hand, the prominence should go to Menashe, and Yaakov felt another? It's because they have a different outlook on life, a different approach to life, Yaakov and Yosef, and this difference of opinion this world outlook will contribute to which one they put first. So according to Yosef's world outcome, as we will explain, according to Yosef's world outlook, there is a maila, as we say, an advantage, something higher to Menashe, to the avoda of Menashe. And truth enough, that makes sense that this is what Yosef sees as higher, because it's Yosef's bachar. And it's not that he thinks it's higher because Menashe is his bachar, but rather the opposite. We know what happens in the physical world reflects the spiritual reality. So the fact that Yosef sees something higher about Menashe is reflected in the fact that he has a child born first named Menashe. That Menashe is what he named his firstborn son. So he saw what will be represented by the name Menashe as higher, so to speak. As opposed to Yaakov's perspective felt that whatever Ephraim was representing, this younger son, that was greater. So as we see, there's more going on here than, we're going to look at deeper than who their descendants are. We're going to look at what they represent. And for that, I'm going to go back to the screen share, and I'm going to show you, we're going to go back to Parshas Miketz, in which Yosef marries Asnas in Mitzrayim, and they have two children, Menashe and Ephraim. And as with many of the names in the Torah, he tells us why he named them what he named them. And every name, as we know, it has very strong spiritual significance. The name of something represents its essence. And sometimes we get told what that is. So I'm going to screen share. Give me just a second. Here we go. All right. All right, that was the Rashi that we looked at. Here, Parshas Miketz, Perek Mamalef of Bereshis. So Menashe, what does he say about Menashe? Vayikra Yosef, Eshem HaBechar Menashe. So Yosef called his Bechar, his firstborn son, Menashe. What did he name him? He named him Menashe, sorry. Why? Ki Nashani Elokim Eskol Amali Ve'eskol Beis Avi. So if you see, Menashe comes from the word Nashani. And Nashani, Jastrow says Nasha. The word Nasha means to forget. So the word here means Ki Nashani Elokim. Hashem has caused me to forget. The grammar of Nashani is not I forgot, but rather caused me to forget. So Hashem caused me to forget Eskol Amali, all of my toil, ve'is kol beis avi, and my father's house. So the idea of Menashe is expressing Yosef's feeling. Both of his children really are going to express a feeling of Yosef that he had in being in Mitzrayim. So remember, he got sold. This is before he had Menashe and Efraim, before his brothers came down to Mitzrayim, before they reunited, before any of that happened. So I can't tell if you see me or not, so I'm going to stop sharing for a second so we can talk about Menashe. And hi, I actually forgot to put my settings back on hide non-participants, hide non-video participants. And I'm going to ask you actually to go off video because I put these on YouTube. I'm going to have to see if that's okay with you. So we'll talk about that. But anyway, so forgot about that. So so I was sharing my screen anyway before about Menashe. So Menashe and Ephraim, as we'll see, expresses Yosef's feelings in having been, brought down to Mitzrayim, in being away from his family and being away from Yaakov, and his emotional experience of what that was for him, what that meant for him, is expressed through the names that he chooses for his children. But as we will see, the name he chooses for Menashe and the name he chooses for Ephraim are going to be very different. So the one for Menashe, as we said, is where he is this, wow, Hashem caused me to forget my father's home. I'm so far away. It's been so long. And I'm so far away that it's like I'm so distant, I'm yearning. There's that feeling of yearning for his father's home, that pain. You can feel that pain expressed there. Hashem caused me to forget my father's home. I'm so far away. Think of a person in exile. As we've made so many connections. I would say it's the strangest thing, but obviously it's not. But I think in almost every single parsha that we've learned together here so far, we've connected to the idea of a hostage, right? So here, we said already that Yosef is in Mitzrayim. He's exiled from his father's home. He's so far away. He's so distant, and he's yearning for it. And that longing, that missing for what was, that upsetness of his, is expressed in the name Menashe. So it expresses his pain in being far from Yaakov. Now, let's remember for a moment that being far from Yaakov doesn't only mean that he is like a familial, a family longing. It doesn't just mean that he's longing for, his mother's cooking, although not his mother's cooking, because we know Rachel Imenu passed away a long time ago, but he's yearning for the scent of his family home and his comfortable bed and his family. It's not just his family. Yaakov Avinu also represents here the ruchnius of his father's home, the feeling, the spirituality, the connectedness, the clarity, the truth, the fact that in Yaakov's presence, which was in Eretz Yisrael, right? They already left Lavan. They were living in Eretz Yisrael. And they were living a Toradic life. I mean, even with Lavan, they lived a Toradic life. But so whether he was with Yaakov in Lavan's house or in Eretz Yisrael, he was infused with the Torah. And we know that Yaakov chose Yosef to give over Torah in the most complete way. He saw that Yosef was most receptive to Torah learning more than the other brothers, which is why he was the favorite and which is why the brothers were jealous. He had this special connection with Yaakov in this spiritual connection. And so longing for his father's home means longing for the spirituality of his father's home, longing for Eretz Yisrael, for being close to his father, which means close to Hashem. So because in his father's home, obviously in the home of the Avos, ruchnius, godliness, Torah and mitzvahs, that was the life they lived. And here, in contrast, he is so far away from that. He's in, as we know, Mitzrayim was the most depraved land in all the world at the time. It was the lowest of the low of the low. And here he was all alone, away from his family, away from spirituality in the lowest place. And he's expressing that pain by naming his son Menashe. And yet, his second son, he had a very different feeling, a very different name, expressing a very different feeling. And for that, I'm going to share screen again, which is this. So for Ephraim, Ve'es Shem Hasheni Kara Ephraim. And the name of the second son, he called Ephraim, Ki Hefrani Elokim Be'eretz Anyi, because Hashem has made me fruitful. I'm going to tell you more about that word in a second. Hashem has made me fruitful, Be'eretz Anyi, in a land of my affliction. So Hashem has made me, Hefrani is the same word as a pri, right, fruit, but also peru urevu. The words are related, right? So just like we say fruitful, fruitful also means like peru urevu is the first mitzvah in the Torah in Bereshis to multiply and have children and fill the world with children. Let me just stop sharing for a second. Here we go. So peru urevu, this idea of multiplication and being fertile is related to the word fruitful. And so this idea of having children, as we know from Parshas Toldos, Eila Toldos Yitzchak, Yaakov. So Yitzchak's Toldos, his descendants as children, are not only his actual physical children, but children, as we know, are also the ways in which we affect the world. So obviously having a child and bringing a child into the world is a very clear way of having an effect on the world, right? You can't beat that in terms of leaving another human on planet Earth. However, every action that we do is also an act of having a child, is having it's doing a pu'ula, it's making an effect on the world. It's doing something and changing the world. Everything that we do, every good deed that we do, as we know, has a ripple effect. So we do a good deed, and that affects other things, which affects other things, which affects other things, which affects other things, which it has an unbelievable ripple effect on the world. So so this idea of Hefrani is Hashem made me fruitful in this land of affliction. So in Mitzrayim, Hashem gave me children on a very simple level. I was fertile, right? Obviously, the English translation doesn't do justice. So if you look at Safaria's translation, and you look at Chabad.org's translation, and you look at any Chumash that you have in your house with a translation, they'll all sound a little different, because the English never does justice to the words in Hebrew, because the words in Hebrew obviously have such huge, deep meanings to it. So Hefrani, however, what I'm trying to say is that on a simple level, you can simply say that Yosef was saying, Hashem blessed me with children. I had Menashe, and not only did I have Menashe, I had Ephraim. As we know, Peru, Uravu, right? You fulfill it with two children, specifically a boy and a girl. And then there are additional mitzvahs, mitzvahs derabanan, rabbinical mitzvahs, to keep having more children, because the idea is to multiply, right? And spread the land, spread children, populate the land is what I meant to say, populate the land. So great, he didn't only have one child, he had two. But on a deeper meaning, what is he saying? He's saying that Hashem has made my actions successful in this land. Look, he went from being a slave to viceroy of Egypt, to second in command of Mitzrayim, and by virtue of Mitzrayim, the whole world. So here his actions have had a success, and he's done something. He's really made a difference in Mitzrayim. And as we know, Beruchnius as well, Yosef's unbelievable, most amazing success in Mitzrayim was not that he was viceroy, and not that he saved the entire world literally from a famine. His most incredible success in Mitzrayim was the fact that he was able to stay true to his roots, stay true to who he was, stay true to his neshama, stay true to his to his father's house. And I'm thinking about this because he said Hashem made me forget, right? And I'm just thinking of this on my own. I didn't see this anywhere. And yet he fought against that, right? He countered that he didn't forget. It's like, I would have forgotten, but I worked on, I chose not to forget. As we know, he was about to succumb to Eshes Potiphar, to Potiphar's wife, but then he remembered he had an image of his father and he was able to hold back. So out of his own bechira, of his own free will, of his own choice, he was able to stay true to his mission of, even in the darkest gullus, the darkest place, the most depraved society, he was able to retain his spirituality, his connectedness, his hold on to his Torah and its mitzvahs, his connection with his father, and stay true to who he was. Okay, so back to this idea of how Yaakov Avinu switched, right? So here's the thing. Menashe and Ephraim show us two different modes of avoda, service of Hashem. Menashe is the avoda, the service of serving Hashem with the longing, this yearning, this, where I am right now is not good. What is right now is not good. The state of the world right now is not good. I'm missing, I'm yearning for something that I knew was, and for us right now, what will be. That is not the case right now. It doesn't add up. It's not expressed in the reality of what I see in the world right now. So Yosef in Mitzrayim, longing for, yearning his father's home and everything that represented, is this idea of when we recognize the world is not as it should be. And if anything woke us up to that, it was October 7th. Woke us up to how far we are from Geula, far we are from a state of the world being perfect. I was just discussing with somebody this week how really before October 7th, I was fooled like everybody else that, truthfully, there isn't evil in the world, right? Nobody's truly evil. Everybody just, they're either brainwashed or they have an illness, right? The way we understand the most heinous crimes, we say, psychologically he was abused as a child, and we have all these explanations. And so therefore our society has come to a place of really disbelieving that there could be evil in the world. But what we were shown is that as long as Mashiach hasn't come yet, there is still evil in the world. There is, Eitz Hadas Tov V'Ra, there is a Ra. There is an evil that we are still contending with, that we see, unfortunately, very clearly today. And after October 7th, we saw that it wasn't just there, but all around the world, the anti-Semitism. Anyway, so what is that meant to bring up in us? Not meant to, but it did. Our reaction is pain. And that pain needs to be coming from a place of yearning, like yearning for something better. Missing, this, how could this be? This can't be. The state of the world should not be this way. We need something different. We need the world to be full of peace and clarity and morality and goodness and kindness and positivity and yes, ruchnius, Torah, mitzvos, because that we know is the only true reality, the only true goodness. So this pain that we experience when we see bad in the world, and also I'm going to bring it also back and forth between that and also in our own lives, when we see ourselves and we see that I'm not in a state that I wish I would be. I wish I was in a holier place, in a more spiritual place, in a clearer headspace. So that is one way of serving Hashem. But Yaakov Avinu said, because why is that a service of Hashem? Because when we have that yearning, right, we will demand, we'll beg, we'll ask Hashem, like, make it different, change it, do something, like, bring Mashiach. This is so terrible. Things need to change. Okay. But Yaakov Avinu said that avoda of yearning and longing and feeling perturbed by what is, that should not be the ikar. The ikar, he took his right hand and put it in Ephraim, because Ephraim represents the idea of action, being fruitful, being fertile in this world of doing, action, making a difference. We can't get stuck, Yaakov Avinu says, in that yearning. We have to also do. We have to take that yearning and bring it into action. So yes, we were horrified after Simchas Torah, horrified, and continue to be horrified. And here actually is an interesting lesson. We should not let go of the Menashe either. I'm going to bring this down I'm going to bring this down for you, okay? If Yaakov Avinu felt that Ephraim is a higher level, and what we really need, the ikar, is action, okay, so then why do we need Menashe? Or to ask it differently, if Ephraim is a higher level, why was Menashe the Bechar? Because as we know, we've said, everything reflects a spiritual reality. So if the spiritual reality of what Ephraim represents is higher than what Menashe represents, why would Menashe be first? Why would he be born first? And the answer is it because, yes, we need both. And we need both in that order. We need the Menashe before the Ephraim. We need to have a feeling of yearning for something better, feeling perturbed and disturbed and upset and moved to our core that things are not as they should be. But why is the word called moved in English? I'm just thinking, like, right? Why is it moved? Because it moves me into action. I can't just be disturbed, upset, and wallowing. as we've said so many times since October 7th, that the wallowing, even last week's parsha, Vayigash, right? Cry for another, but change yourself. The wallowing just leads to depression. And depression is lack of movement. Simcha is action. It was unbelievable how the response of the Jewish people was besimcha, simcha, simcha. We need to be besimcha. How can we be besimcha? And as we've said many times, it's not that we're happy, God forbid, for what happened. We have a very strong sense of Menashe. And again, it's not just October 7th. It's continue. Every day that we hear a soldier dies fighting for our people, every day that we hear the hostages have not returned yet, right? We're reliving this over and over and over again. And it's an important first step, but we can't stop there. We can't stop in the wallowing, the yearning, the feeling upset and disturbed, because if we stop there, we end up in just, depression. And that is not the purpose. The purpose is that we then are moved into action, into Ephraim, into Hephrani. We're doing something, and that is the simcha. The simcha is movement, right? Like when you're when you're so happy, when you're so full of joy, you can't keep your feet on the ground. You have to move. You have to dance. Chassidus talks about simcha as hispashtus hanefesh. My soul is like outpouring from me. The state of simcha is a state of action. So we need Menashe to come first, but because we can't have Ephraim without Menashe. The action that was the action that we saw in Am Yisrael, this incredible revolution of chesed and of tefillah and of Torah and mitzvos in like so many various areas, everybody coming together be'achdus, in unity, and taking on new mitzvahs and saying tehillim and connecting to Hashem in new ways and elevating ourselves in new ways, and all the challah bakes. All of that was precipitated by this feeling of Menashe, this feeling of upsetness and disturbedness and yearning for something better. So Yaakov's lesson to us was that if you're moved by something, if you're disturbed by something, if you're upset by something, if you're yearning for something better, if you're not okay with status quo, if you think that things are not as they should be, great, do something about it. And that's the ikr. The ikr, right? Hamaisa hu ha'ikr. Ikr means the main idea, the most important thing here. Hamaisa, action, is the ikr. So I want to bring this back actually to the Rashi. I won't share screen, I'll just say it verbally. I thought of this as I was learning it, and I saw that Rashi points out that Yehoshua comes out of Ephraim, right? And therefore Ephraim is greater because his descendant will be Yehoshua. And what does Rashi say? It says Yehoshua sheyanchil es haaretz, right? He will be the one to help the Jewish people inherit the land. V'yalmid Torah liYisrael, and he will teach Torah to the Jewish people. And I was thinking, that represents this idea. That is this idea of Hephrani, of taking action, of doing something, of right. We know the idea of Eretz Yisrael is literally turning the physical world into a home for Hashem, taking a land, a piece of earth that would have been a country like any other, and turning it into not Israel, the state of Israel, but the land of Israel, the holy land of Israel, right? Turning it into a holy place. That is the idea of Eretz Yisrael, is taking, is infusing the physical with the spiritual, which is the greatest action that we could do. That is the action that we are meant to do in the world, right? Adding spirituality into this world, turning the darkness into light. And that, again, that is what Yosef was saying. When he's saying, I was Hephrani, I was fertile, I was fruitful, my actions were successful in where? Be'eretz Oni, in the land of affliction, in a dark place, in a painful place, in a galus. So in this state of galus, our job, this idea of Ephraim, is to turn the galus, turn the darkness of this exile into light. Not only we're saying that we want to go back to a place of light, but the ultimate is when we actually turn the darkness into light. And my friends, looking around, you see the Jewish people, that's exactly what we're doing, right? We're bringing the light. And as we know, Ki Yisron ha'ar min ha'choshech, in Mishlei, I believe, if I'm not misquoting, Ki Yisron, I'm forgetting the whole pasuk, but light that comes out of darkness is even greater than light otherwise, right? So the light, the that we see in this horrible time, in this terrible time that's coming out of such a dark period of the for the Jewish people, the light is that much greater quantitatively and qualitatively than the light of any other time. So pulling everything together, and so Yehoshua was Yanchil es haaretz and Vilamed Torah, right? He taught the Jewish people Torah. When we live the life of Torah and mitzvos, and in Eretz Yisrael in particular, and if we're not actually in Eretz Yisrael, then supporting Eretz Yisrael with our tefillos and our mitzvos, and God willing, also going to Eretz Yisrael in the most real sense, but also turning the world into an Eretz Yisrael. Even outside of Eretz Yisrael, we can turn the galus into Eretz Yisrael. As we know, when Mashiach comes, the whole world will turn into an Eretz Yisrael. So what is this all about? It's whatever situation you find yourself in. To take one piece, one idea, and hone it down before we get closed off in a minute. Whatever situation you find yourself in, wherever by hashgacha pratis, by divine orchestration, Hashem has led you to wherever you are in life, whether that's a location or a circumstance or a situation. Instead of sufficing in yearning, waiting to get out of it, if you're not satisfied with it, I'm saying, if you're in a situation that's not good, not so good, instead of just yearning and fetching and crying and wanting to get out of it, and even davening like, Hashem, get me out of this, rather we can use the opportunity that we find ourselves in to change the environment itself and to use it as an opportunity for growth wherever we are. We take the Menashe, the yearning, and we turn it into an Ephraim. It's about to close off, so have a beautiful Shabbos. Thank you for joining me. All right, chazak, v'nis chazek.